I would never forget to do the clap.
Never forget to mess with the audio. Okay, alright. Welcome to the Magic Mirror Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Khan, the Trinket Mage. And with me, as usual, is 33 Elk.
Hello.
And this time we have an extra special, chocolate-covered, sprinkles on top guest, Salubrious Snail.
Great to be here.
Yeah, back from Yugoslavia?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, this week's episode is going to be on the saltiest archetypes in Commander. We'll also touch on Foundation spoilers a little bit, and then we'll finish up with some questions from the question zone. Before we get into all that, we gotta thank our sponsor, Card Castle. They're the easy way to sort your collection digitally. Just scan the cards with their app, and then you get your collection on your phone or computer or wherever. Use the link in the description for 1 free month of premium. Thanks to Card Castle for sponsoring the video. Let's start with some Foundation spoilers. I gotta ask you, Doubling Season is going to be in a set that is going to be reprinted for 5 years. How low does the price go?
I think like 20 is the hard floor. I think it's going to be closer to 30 than 20 though. Just because Commander players.
Not low enough for me to want to play it.
Yeah, exactly. 5-mana enchantment does nothing when you play it. You couldn't pay me to put that card in my deck.
There you go. Exactly.
I mean, I'm never going to play it, but...
Innkeeper's Talent is just a better card.
Yeah, so I think it's never going to do anything in Standard.
Yeah.
But I think this is going to, like, obliterate the price. I don't think we've seen anything get reprinted for 5 years in a row like this before. I think it's going to be a $5 card.
Did they say that they were going to, like, rolling reprint Foundations for this 5-year period?
They have to. It's going to be legal in Standard for 5 years. If they print it, like, limited...
But that would be so
for, like,
cool. Yeah, if they just printed it for 1 year, and then the rest of the 4 years in Standard, you just let the price balloon, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah, then Standard becomes, like, legacy prices. Yeah, great. That's cool.
But, like, I feel like Doubling Season has been printed, like, kind of a lot, right? Like, Double Masters, Commander Masters.
Yeah, it gets printed so frequently.
There's the Wilds of Eldraine, like, Enchanting Tales reprints. All of those are, like, 2 cents, and yet the one for Doubling Season is still 35 for that, so...
Yeah, but that's bonus sheet, and those other ones are in premium priced packs. This is a standard priced pack.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the long and short of it, I think, is like Doubling Season has been printed a lot, hasn't adjusted the price too much. I think, like I said, the floor is probably 20, ceiling's probably 35. Like I somewhere in that range is going to be pretty fair to say. I think it's be closer to 30 than 20 though.
30 sounds reasonable. I could see it being 25 though.
A lot of good reprints in the set though. Massacre Worm.
Oh yeah. No, there's a bunch of good ones. Yeah, a lot of just like very classic cards. You know, you got your Omniscience. That's pretty fun.
Runescar Demon.
Oh yeah, that's my boy.
Runescar Demon was cool.
I played against that so much when I was 12.
I like Omniscience, especially with Kona in Standard. Oh man, you can actually do fun things in Standard for once.
Maze's End will be in Standard for 5 years.
Sorry, they put Maze's End in this set? What?
Yeah, Gates and Maze's End.
There's
There's gate support.
In like a bonus sheet?
No, it's just part of it. It's just a regular mythic in the set.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not see that anywhere. That's interesting.
I want to Maze's End someone in Standard. That would be funny.
Yeah, you're gonna get like Atraxid on like turn 4. Sorry. Someone's gonna puke it into play with Kona, or like you're gonna get blasted with poison from Innkeeper's Talent, or like trampled over. Though actually big for Standard, Authority the consoles, Boros Control with their trampling Phyrexian token each turn. It's just gonna enter tapped.
I think green is going to be, like, Mono Green is going to be a real deck for a while, because you got Gigantosaurus and, like, Vivian Reed.
Llanowar Elf, right?
Like, the good one. And Llanowar Elf, yeah.
Oh, I know there was a card that just made me so happy inside, as somebody who got into Magic in a Strad block, which is Tragic Banshee. The the 5 mana 5/3 morbid. When this creature enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. If the creature died this turn, that creature gets -13/-13 instead. It's like a smash together of Morkrut Banshee and Tragic Slip. So good. I love it.
Did you guys see the limited combo? There's Marauding Blight Priest, which says whenever you gain a life, each opponent loses one life. And then there's the Sanguine Bond Vampire that gains you life.
Yeah, it's a good thing
whenever.
that's a mythic.
Yeah, so like if you have this mythic and this common, you can like infinite life loss combo your opponent in limited. It's so funny.
I love that
That's
Time
good.
Stop is in the set. Like, Time Stop is such a fun card. It's so funny.
I love to end the turn.
I used to play a discontinuity deck in Standard. That was hilarious.
My friend Hans loves to end the turn, so I have experiences with that in multiple decks of his. It's a funny card.
I love that the foil versions of Time Stop don't have reminder text, so it's just end the turn with no additional words on it.
Yeah, it's just end the turn.
Visually, it looks phenomenal.
It ain't that complicated. What's the issue? It's just over.
Blasphemous Edict, in my opinion, is like super good for Commander. It's 3 black for a sorcery. You may pay black rather than this spell's mana cost if there are 13 or more creatures on the battlefield. And then it has each player sacrifice 13 creatures of their choice.
Yeah,
So it's like a 5 mana Wrath, right? Like if they have more than 13 creatures, yes, technically you won't get all of them. But it's a 5 mana Wrath. But then if there's a lot of things on the board, it's a 1 mana Wrath. I think it's quite good.
yeah. I think the card's good. I don't think it's a black staple. A lot of people are like, "Ooh, black staple!" Like Blasphemous X goes in every red deck. Like this is gonna go in every black deck. I don't think that's the case. I think counting to 13 is a lot harder than counting to 8, which is what Blasphemous Act needs to be 1 mana.
Yeah, or even it's on like 7 mana. Blasphemous Act like is 2 mana.
Yeah, exactly. And the reduction's all or nothing. You need 13 or more creatures, or you get 0 reduction. Versus Blasphemous Act, you can throw it down on 3.
But I think the difference is Blasphemous Act is unplayable at 9 mana. A 5 mana Wrath is like pretty
for
fun.
sure.
Yeah, that's fair. The floor is a lot lower. I think that there's also something to be said that you can't do the indestructible trickery that you can with Blasphemous Act. Like if you have a Selfless Spirit, sack it. Oop, now my board wipes one-sided. Versus the Edict, you need to have some sort of like graveyard parity breaking there, which isn't hard for black to do, of course, but you need to utilize it.
Or if you have something that cares about sacrifices, like
Mayhem
Core
Devil
Vault,
or
right?
something. Yeah, like you need to build around it. I don't think it's a staple. Blasphemous Act can go in any red deck, in my opinion. I don't think this goes in every black deck.
I disagree. I think I'm going to just cut Damnation for this, straight up.
I don't know if I'd cut Damnation for it, but I could see it.
Depends on how much indestructible you see, I feel like, or how much regenerate.
That's fair. It's definitely a medical.
No, Damnation gets amount of regenerate, but indestructible for sure. Card I really like is Spinner of Souls, the spider that whenever a non-creature token another non-token creature you control dies, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card, put that card into your hand, the rest of the bottom of your library in any order. So there is an enchantment, I don't remember what it's called, but it's one that has a green sacrifice a creature, do that thing. The fact that this has it just like not attached to a sacrifice, you can like do things with this and another sacrifice outlet.
Evolutionary Leap.
Yeah, evolution. That's what I'm thinking of. I've always liked.
I played it in Modern.
I've always liked that card. The fact that you get that kind of effect, but
just on a death, yeah,
just on a death, you can use you can literally use it with evolutionary leap. Get 2 creatures. You can you can
stack it up.
It's a fun card. I like it.
When I first read that card, I thought for sure it was 4 or 5 mana, but I looked at the cost. It was 3, 2 and a green. That's so cheap.
That's so efficiently costed. But yeah, I love it when my creatures are made of creatures. Big fan.
Exactly. You have nesting dolls going on.
Absolutely.
For me, I was looking at a couple of the Jumpstart cards. Firstly, in the main set, there's the 4 mana Angel, Exemplar of Light, 2 white for a 3/3. Whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on her. And whenever you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on her, you draw a card only once each turn. So it's a 4 mana Angel that draws you a card once a turn whenever you gain life, basically. That's going to go in Sephara. Sephara has lifelink. I hit people with my flying lifelink Angel. I draw an extra card every turn. Okay, great. Angel, Howling Mine. Awesome. Very simple. The other card that's a lot more spicy that I'm looking at is from Jumpstart. It's Ophelia, Viper Whisperer. I need to preface that this card I think is bad. It is 1 in a black for a 1/3 Gorgon Assassin, legendary creature. Death Touch. Whenever she attacks, you may pay 1 or Gorgari hybrid mana, so black or green. If you do, you make a 1/1 black snake with Death Touch. And then she has a second activated ability that says 4 in a black until end of turn. Whenever 1 or more Gorgons and or snakes you control deal combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. So this card sucks, but I'm going to try it in Farrakha. And in fact, I might never cut it from Farrakha because it's just too funny. Where I'll have like boards of like 6 or so snakes. And it's just like, play this, activate it for 5 mana, attack you with my snakes. And it's like, okay, do you take it or do I play Gwyndu?
Yeah, that's a fun card.
Yeah, I mean, I just love the life having mechanic we've been getting. Like we got Grievous Wounds last set. We got the Butcher. We got another instance of life loss doubling. It was like we got so much of this in the past year. Just like have the life total.
It's great for Commander. Cut down those over fattened life totals. We don't need that around here.
Exactly.
Get it down into the teens. Get it down to the single digits.
Yeah, and then once you get Death Touch snakes with Trample, I mean, you can't even block those efficiently. So enjoy.
Yep.
I'm liking Homunculus Horde.
Homunculus Horde's funny.
4 mana. It's 3 and a blue for a 2/2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, make a token that's a copy of this.
Yeah, blue Scoot Swarm.
Oh yeah, you just like cantrip, make 2 dudes. Cantrip, make 4 dudes. Cantrip, make 8 dudes, and you just start making dudes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And if you have something like Adrix and Niv or whatever, you're just making a million homunculi real quick. It's pretty funny.
I've never been a fan of Scoot Swarm, so I guess that kind of like card just doesn't make my brain buzz the way it makes other people's brain buzz.
Yeah,
I think Scoot Swarm is very different because it can make copies of itself, but Scoot Swarm is landfall, right?
Yeah, it's more predictable.
So you just do it all in one turn, right?
Yeah.
So you like land, crack my fetch line. That's 2 more Scoot Swarms. Play a ramp spell. That's 3, 4, 5, and you just trigger it that many times. This one is second card each turn. You have to do it turn after.
Yeah,
turn.
you do have to think a little bit about like how you're playing on your opponent's turns.
For sure, yeah, it's definitely a bit more finesse. I more meant in the payoff of it, the payoff of
just making a million dudes.
Get a million dudes.
Yeah,
like, it's fair. It's fair. I respect it.
Yeah,
I think I just like the art.
My final thoughts on Foundations is that Arabo Roar of the World stocks are really up. There's like a huge glut of cats we're getting in this set, and including in Arabo, just like all these like cat synergies for creature types.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Eminence Arabo is not a commander card, which sounds weird because it's obviously a commander card.
It's
but
obviously the weakest one. I agree.
But it's not even that it's weak. It's just not an engine. It's a beatdown card. So
good.
What are EDH players going to do with a beatdown card rather than an engine that draws you cards whenever you do some convoluted game action? Like,
yeah,
what
they
do
don't know
do
how
with
to
that?
attack. I get +3/+3 and pass. Okay.
What am I supposed to do with +3/+3? Come on.
That's what makes me love Arabo the most, is he actually makes the game end. Like you swing at people.
Yeah.
If you play that cat that has infect on turn.
Oh yeah. You give it double strike.
Oh, the game is fast. That's 1 player gone. Like it's so quick.
Arabo was in my $25 deck pool, and that I think was by far the most popular commander from among those, and eventually became way too expensive for the pool. But
Arabo's like $15 now.
Oh yeah, no, it was like $1 or $2 when the pool happened, but. Yeah, I love Arabo. It's a very fun card, but it's just a very different kind of mid-range EDH than most commanders.
And you're not going to build Arabo, right, without Ocelot Pride. That's another $40 you got to spend on that deck, bare minimum. Like you're already $55.
40?
It's $40. Yeah.
Yes. It's one of the best cards of Modern right now.
On a white record.
I mean it's a really strong card. So that makes sense. That scans. I just don't keep in touch with those prices.
One card? Speaking of tribal decks. Soulstone Sanctuary, I think, is going to be like a big staple card.
Is it the Mutavault?
It's kind of like
expensive Mutavault.
Wait.
No. Here's the interesting thing.
Not until end of turn.
A land. Yes, exactly. It's not until end of turn. It's a land, enters untapped, taps for colorless. You can pay 4 to make it a 3/3 with vigilance and all creature types.
Oh,
It's still a land, but then it doesn't change back.
Oh,
It's
I just thought it was a
permanent.
terrible mutavault.
It permanently becomes a 3/3 of whatever your type is.
Oh, that's cool.
But it keeps the land ability, so it can still tap for mana. So it's just a mana dork of whatever type you have with vigilance.
Oh, that's really
so
fun.
it can even attack and then tap. Yeah, right?
I like that. Yeah. No, that's super. Of course, that should have become clear when I saw that it had vigilance.
Well,
That's
yeah.
cool. I like that.
Most of the time, you like read these cards like, oh yeah, it's until end of turn. Like your brain will autofill and stuff.
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
manland. Does manland things. There was Celestial Armor, which is the equipment that when it enters target creature you control, or it gets attached to target creature you control, and that creature gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And then it has like some other like gives flying.
+2/+0
but
flying.
I just find it really interesting how many equipments we're getting these days that either attach immediately on entry or have flash or give some other thing immediately. Like it seems like equipments aren't allowed to be these sort of, planned out, slow rolling pieces. They have to be, combat tricks that are also something else.
It's like a weird thing where like they've tried over the years and succeeded to make everything catch up with instants and sorceries on power level. But now instants and sorceries are not nearly as powerful as creatures, right? Because creatures, they have these ETBs, that's basically sorcery on top of your body, right? And then these like flash enchantments and flash equipment and stuff. Not only do you get the equipment ETB like combat trick thing, but then it's also a static effect that is giving you continuous value over time.
Yeah, we've seen this as well with auras, especially. Auras have gotten a huge buff over time, where now we see auras, they always have draw a card stapled onto them, or they have some other bonus effect, like they'll come with a token, or they'll come back to your hand, right? These sorts of effects with these auras, as opposed to it just being like a dumb dorky, like I put an aura on my creature and 2-for-1 myself to your Doomblade, like auras always were.
Right. Yeah, well, I guess, and we've been seeing, versions of additional things tacked on for a while. Like literally, living weapon was 15 years ago almost at this point. But I think that the kind of flash ETB things on equipments, and some auras, I think that feels a little bit newer for sure.
Yeah, we got a flash aura in this set too. I forgot the name of it,
which I like it. Yeah, it's the double strike one. I like that card
yeah.
a lot. Yeah. Yeah, that card's cool. I like it.
See, my problem with it is like it now every single instant that gives double strike is like instantly power crept by it.
I mean, it is three
because it permanently gives double strike
for sure. It is 3 mana double white, so like it's a somewhat more challenging mana cost. Like, I think there are some equipments that are like super, like definitely feel like they're power creeping actual combat tricks. Like I know there were a couple from the Assassin's Creed set, like the Footblade, that just are so strong that they're basically as powerful as a combat trick, but then also they're an equipment. Twin Blade Blessing and the equipment I mentioned earlier are definitely a little bit weaker. Like they're both 3 mana. They're a little bit overcosted by like 1 mana for the combat trick at least.
I like Foundations overall. I think this set's really cool.
Yeah,
agreed. Let's talk about salty archetypes. And so we've all come with a few. I guess we just go around our table mirror. We're around a mirror, right? We go around the mirror and talk about what you think is the saltiest archetype in Commander.
So I came up with a couple different reasons of why people might be salty about archetypes. I don't know that I didn't come up with like a specific most salty, but
why don't we start with Alex? Why archetypes are salty?
Okay, so I have a theory, and this applies to a few different archetypes, and it also ties back into my most recent video. So that's pretty cool, or I guess most recent as of recording this. It's that decks make people salty when there are major gameplay tools that are used for the sake of using those gameplay tools rather than with an end in mind. So one example of this is group hug decks that are purely just playing group hug cards to play group hug cards. They just want to do group hug cards. They have no plan in mind, no kind of ideas for the future, really. Just playing group hug cards to play for the sake of playing group hug cards. And then I think an amplification of that is chaos decks that are playing chaos cards just for the sake of playing chaos cards, who just want to, who don't have any sort of, because there are chaos cards that have valid usages in other decks, whether that be in kind of a stacks deck or like a super techie deck. But I think it makes people upset when somebody is playing, chaos stuff just for the sake of playing chaos stuff. And I think that's also why people are upset with Turgid, I would argue, to some extent, is because it is just kind of a massive pile of removal and discard for the sake of removal and discard, less so for, strategic purposes outside of the line of text on the commander.
Yeah. I have a video relating to that sort of feeling, this vibe of like, oh, I've built all for group hug or all for chaos or all for discard, and I don't have any way to convert it into a win. It's EDH, how to avoid slogfests in Commander. That video would make a really good watch for anyone who is like sort of like, oh, everyone hates my deck. There might be some insights in there. But yeah, generally I agree that broadly this can be applied to any deck too. If you don't build your deck to win, or rather, excuse me, let me rephrase. If you don't build your deck with a game plan in mind that can close the game, you're going to have a miserable game no matter what. You should have an idea of how your deck can close a game in mind. Otherwise, you're going to get like a turn like 10, 12, 13 game, 2 hours long. Everyone's miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when things... And I think it's when cards aren't run with a purpose usually is the biggest issue. Because if you're like thinking out all of the decisions behind each card in your deck, you're generally going to end up in decent situations, hopefully. But if you're just tossing in things because that is what seems fun during the deck building process without much further thought, then sometimes issues can crop up.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I don't even know if you can call it an archetype, like good stuff. Just like it feels like there's a lot of people who just like, I put 99 good cards in my deck and I'm going to go down and slam a Great Henge on turn 3. And I'm just going to then also play Beast Whisperer. And then I'm going to start drawing like 5 cards for each of my cards. Like, I mean, it's just a big value pile, some of these decks, right? For me, it's a little bit frustrating because it's like, I'm here to jam my synergy engines. I'm not here to like watch you just get free value off Heuristic Study and what have you. And I feel like it's sort of in the same vein as what you said, which is just like, this is instead of like, oh, I'm running group hug cards for the sake of being group huggy, or I'm running chaos cards for the sake of being chaosy. I'm just running good cards for the sake of having a good deck, versus like, doing the classic commander player action of, sacrificing a bit of your power for some more synergistic cards or what have you.
Sure. Well, I mean, I would say I'm maybe not the Great Henges of the world, because I'm a budget player mostly, but I certainly am, I guess, guilty to some extent of playing the generic decks. I think particularly something like my Rada deck, does its ramp in the early game and then just kind of picks out the best possible 6-7 drop creatures and slams them all into the deck. They mostly have purposes. I pick and prune a little bit, but it is definitely a little bit of the pile of good stuff, and there are sometimes
with your Radha deck though, there's a bit of there's a cascade theme going throughout. There's like elements of synergy that sort of shine through, and that I can appreciate a lot. And honestly, like if someone's like, listen, I have a Gruul ramp deck, I'm just here to play big monsters and kill you guys, I'm down to play that every so often. Like, some people need their dessert decks. I have Iara. It's just a bunch of mono black staples, right? So like, there's certainly room for that. It's just like when it's every single game and it's like, okay, I have, generic value engine number 12. It's like, you can only play against that so many times before you're like, I'm sick of seeing Heuristic Study. I'm sick of seeing, Guardian Project.
I know. I know. And honestly, this could be an episode all on its own. But the idea of people having kind of personal staples that they feel like go in every deck. I know I've encountered this a lot with people, and I don't have this as much to an extent. I think I had it worse when I was kind of building more mid-range decks, and I would just jam Kogla in every deck. But I've gotten a little bit better about it.
Kogla's your staple? Okay, sorry, continue.
Look, I'm a budget mid-range player. I did not come here to be hated on.
It's just
yes, 98 cards and a monkey.
Look, I like removal engines. I like lots of value being packed into one card. I like Kogla.
yeah, right. You're like Soul Ring check, Command Tower check, Monkey check. We're good.
Exactly, you get it.
I don't mind good stuff decks very much. Like, I don't think they're not the most interesting decks, of course, but I don't have any problem with that. Like, if you just want to like play, like, I mean, I played Zhao Dun the One-Eyed mono black good stuff for a long time. Actually, it was just like mid-range black cards, just like medium-sized creatures, and I just recurred the things that I needed with Zhao Dun, then brought him back to my hand. And like that was kind of it. It was a very like simple, casual kind of deck. I actually kind of like good stuff.
Just give me a little bit of spice, you know, like the Portal 3 Kingdoms commander. That's the spice I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, you know, Holland.
I mean, Zhao Dun's not that interesting. He returns. He's an e-witness. He's an eternal
That's
witness.
fine. I don't mind that. Like, it's cool. Let's jam. Fun. Portal 3 Kingdoms. Let's go. It's like, you know, Holland number 3 into like a pile of card draw and spells, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna fall asleep.
It's always interesting for me to think about why other people have a card in a deck. So, you know, when I see, and this usually sometimes comes up with like the really niche cards of the world, but usually comes up with like the kind of powerful staples. When I'm kind of playing a mid-power game and I see like a Mana Crypt or a Cyclonic Rift, I guess not a Mana Crypt anymore, I kind of, my brain almost instinctually like imagines the point in this person's life where they are putting that Cyclonic Rift into this, you know, dinky mid-power deck, and I go, where are you at as a person? What's happening there?
This is where brackets come in. Brackets are gonna solve this issue. Our savior.
And I think it's interesting to think about kind of what the purpose behind a card is, because I think a lot of times, you know, if it's and I think this is going to be a lot of cases where you have like just a Great Henge or, you know, some other powerful staple, you know, there's not even really much thought going in. It's just a card that goes in the deck because it, you know, fits the role that's needed. It's one of my staples. I just put it in my deck. But then I kind of wonder with other cards, you know, what's the thought there? Is this person having some sort of advanced monologue, or is this a fairly simple decision?
Interesting, because like for me, I play Cycrift in basically all my blue decks, right? I think it's a genuine true staple, and the reason for it is in all of my decks, I want to be able to hit every single type of card with as many caveats as I can, right? Can I beat an indestructible enchantment? Can I beat a hexproof indestructible artifact? Like, how many ways can I like solve this? Like, can my deck beat every single possible scenario? And catch-all cards like Cycrift checks all of those boxes for me, because for me, when I build a deck, I have to check all of these boxes.
Yeah, for me, oh god.
Doesn't that take the challenge out of it though? Doesn't that, you know, if you're checking boxes is like this little mini quest, isn't adding a Cycrift to your like kind of dinky mid-power deck, isn't that kind of cheating?
Yeah, that's a little fair.
If I'm mono blue, is there another good way to get around a hexproof indestructible artifact?
Well, I mean, you said you put it in all your blue decks. So is that all your mono blue decks, or all your like 2-3 color decks?
So if I'm in, all right, let's look at Tawanos, right? Tawanos is it? Do I have a good way around like a hexproof or indestructible enchantment, let's say? It has to be counterspell on the way down. But this isn't a deck that I want to overload on counterspells on.
There's what's the scrap mastery? It's Living Death for artifacts.
Sorry, but if I said it, what if it's an enchantment?
Okay, if it's an enchantment, you get a little bit more difficult. Shadow Spear.
I think it is, but then I have to run Shadow Spear, and I'm not a creature deck. Right, so like I think it's important for all of my decks to hit all of these things, and I want to do that in an as compact way as possible, which in my case is Cycrift for most blue decks. So with Cycrift, I've checked all my boxes, and then I have more slots to put my other things, right? Because I know no matter what my opponent has, I have at least one out to it, and I feel very comfortable about that.
Oh man, he pulled up
I
the
get
compact
that.
word.
There's the desire to have, a lovely top deck. It's nice knowing, it's nice being able to see something horrifying in your opponent's board and kind of say to yourself, okay, if I draw this, I'm going to be out of this. I definitely, I get the appeal there, but yeah, I don't know. I don't like Cycrift much. I think in mid power games it kind of makes me cringe a bit, and that's gonna be my take on things.
Yeah, I will never apologize for running Teferi's Protection in my deck until Cycrift is not in my tables. I will happily play Teferi's Protection till the end of days, until that card's gone.
It's just over. I mean, I think I know I played with it in Standard in 2014. There it felt like kind of a middling card. It was fine.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I got bought by
the...
it in Cube recently.
it's funny in 1v1 formats. It's okay because it's a dispersed worst case scenario, which isn't great, but it's fine. In EDH it's just like way overtuned for what it does. It shouldn't be 7 mana to bounce all opposing permanents. It should be like 8 at least. So I just don't find it appropriate from a power level standpoint in a mid power game. And I find that it just like the just like one-sided reset, if you have like multiple people playing that, you have to experience that like multiple times a game. Like at least run like the one that like targets a player and makes them bounce all their stuff, or one that like is one of the like 5 mana bounce everything. Like when it's symmetrical it feels a little better, but
you say that, but Farewell is more egregious in my opinion than Cycrift. I cannot stand Farewell.
I actually agree. Yeah,
I don't like Farewell.
The sorcery speed is like obviously a downside to Farewell, but exiling everything is like the Cycrift. There's definitely been times where like you get rifted or you cast rift or whatever, and like people just redeploy because you're not able to like capitalize on it.
Yeah.
With Farewell, there's none of that. Farewell actually can grind games to an absolute halt.
The graveyard exile in Farewell annoys me the most. I hate it.
Absolutely. I'm in the same boat. As the resident Farrakha player, like self-mill Golgari value bullshit. Oh, I explore.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And that's funny because I feel like Farewell is an example of a card where on a power level standpoint, it's just objectively worse than Cycrift. But
really?
Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't say objectively worse because obviously they perform somewhat different functions. But just like 6 mana is a lot for a non one-sided board wipe.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like the Farewell versus Cyclonic Rift argument is a little bit apples to oranges. Like they perform different things, like Alex said.
I think you are playing Farewell wrong. Farewell is such a one-sided board.
This is the worst part though. Is it amplifies the worst?
On the deck,
sure. Exactly. It amplifies the worst use case of Cyclonic Rift. If the Merfolk player casts Cyclonic Rift and then kills us all with Merfolk, that's fine. It's like Winds of Abandon or like Akroma's Will, right? It's an Alpha Strike. That's the best case for Cyclonic Rift, where I'm the least salty about the card. Where I'm most salty about it is someone's playing a control deck. They have 2 permanents on the board. They're not going to close out the game soon. They Cyclonic Rift everyone and then slam a rule wall or something on their turn. And then, oh my God, we're going to have to play for like 5 hours. And that's every single time you cast Farewell. Versus Cyclonic Rift can have a little glimmer.
Farewell, if you're like an enchantment deck or like an artifact deck, oh my goodness, it's so one-sided. Because then you get to be like, exile all creatures and either artifacts or enchantments, whichever you're not using. So like in my Heliod deck, right?
Okay.
I have like a bunch of enchantments in play. I go exile your creatures, your graveyards, your artifacts. I now have a full board. You got nothing unless you're also an enchantment deck, which doesn't happen often. And yeah, I'm not closing out the game in like 2 turns from here, but I'm so far ahead. It's a one-sided board wipe. I think Farewell is stronger than Cycrift, because with Cycrift, if they can't immediately close out the game, you always get to redeploy everything next turn.
Yeah, I can see it in Shrines then. You're right. I feel like...
Well, yeah, if you're playing a Shrine deck and you just don't say enchantments and you get to keep all your Shrines and everyone else's stuff is gone, that's That's really good.
Yeah, that's fair. The thing is, I don't see it ever used like that.
Well, that's because people just put it in every single deck as like, I'm behind, I'm gonna like reset the board. But like,
usually
it is best in a specific type of deck.
I usually think about it in creature decks, but yeah, I can totally imagine that Farewell gets real nasty if you run it in like a mostly artifact or mostly enchantment deck that can make it mostly one-sided, basically.
Once again, I'm a Teferi's Protection player, and I'll never apologize for it. I hate that card.
Once again, we're not even
yeah, no, I get
close to the topic.
Oh yeah, we've just ventured off into general salt.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We're close enough.
Should we title this episode? Is this just
like stuff that makes us salty.
Stuff that makes Alex personally mad.
If we title stuff that makes Salubrious Snail personally mad, people will.
True. They really will.
Like, I'm down to do that.
I will take the Cyclonic Rift out of your hand and eat it.
Speaking of cards that makes Salubrious Snail mad, I know that you don't like Teferi's Protection, the card I keep mentioning. I don't like it either.
I don't. I think we're going to have very similar opinions on this because I don't like it, but I also think that board wipes are overtuned for EDH broadly, so I get it.
Yeah.
It's like a necessary evil.
Yeah, no, I am just a victim of the arms race.
Yeah.
And overall, I think the protection should be stronger than removal. I think if you are committing to the board and like actively putting like tempo into play, your protection spell should be stronger than the Doomblade. That's my opinion. I think if you take a game action that moves the game forward, you should not be punished for having a lackluster protection spell against a more push removal spell.
I'm 100% okay with all of the kind of the phase out protection spells. The Teferi's Protection, like literally the life total like freezing is the only thing that offends me about that card.
The fact that it's also a fog is just so broken, and it's a super fog on top of that. It's not
the fact that it's fog. The fact that it's a fog until your next turn is bonkers, and I hate it. But the protection aspect of it is fine.
Have you ever done the funny combo with it? Teferi's Protection and
Lethal Vapors?
Lethal Vapors, where you skip infinite turns and then cast Teferi's Protection, and if they don't have a way, if the whole table can't stop themselves from milling out, you just win.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
I remember we were playing in a pod, and a friend of mine did that combo, and then like two of us didn't have a way to not deck out, so we're like, we're gonna lose. But my friend who was playing Rashmi with Charbelcher did have ways to stop himself from decking out, so he just Charbelchered both of us and then like set up his deck like perfectly and got all of his mana in play, did like all the stuff and lined up, and then he was like, all right, I guess infinite turns pass, my deck is ordered exactly as I want it, let's go. And then my friend came back to the game after his Teferi's Pro, and none of his spells resolved for the rest of the game.
That's fair. That's pretty good.
It's so legendary. That was such a good game.
I was also informed by my comments section after my Stacks video by like literally 20% of comments that there are in fact ways around Teferi's Protection. That if you run like a damage thing, damage can't be prevented thing, plus something else I want to say.
Yeah, so
I don't remember exactly.
The joke is if you have like Questing Beast, which says damage you control from creatures you control can't be prevented, and then you attack with your commander, you still do commander damage through the Teferi's Protection. You can get to 21 commander damage. You can get to 10 infect. Because the only thing is it says that your life total can't change and you gain protection from everything. So with damage can't be prevented, the protection no longer applies. Your life total still doesn't change, but you'll still get infect counters and you'll still take commander damage. Those are the things that will go through.
Yeah, which that's funny. But I don't know. That's entertaining.
I want to talk about Drannith Magistrate. How do you feel about this card?
Okay, I think Drannith Magistrate is a completely fine card. I feel like it's one of those cards that I don't want to see at like, everyone's like playing Commander with their precons sort of deck. But like if everyone's like mid power, sort of mid high power, I totally could see Drannith Magistrate being at the table. And this is exclusively just because like it's a 3 toughness creature. Just bolt it. Just Swords to Plowshares it. Bite the bullet. It's cast the removal spell. And if you don't have removal in your deck, I really like I don't know what else to say other than like I think it's like kind of deserved.
Yeah, I mean, I personally definitely don't have decks that are usually weak to it. I rarely use commanders in a similar way to how other people use them. At the same time, I don't think punishing people for building their deck kind of poorly is necessarily a good thing, and I think Drannith Magistrate is it's a much more direct way of doing that than other cards. You know, you play it against somebody who has a deck that's maybe a little bit too commander centric, maybe a little bit too removal light, and they'll just get stonewalled out of the game. So I think I would be fine with it in high power casual. I personally would be fine with it pretty much anywhere, but for the sake of other people, I think it's probably good to, you know, keep it cordoned off a little.
Yeah, it's not something I run personally, but if I saw it across the table from me, I'd be like, oh, cool, a braid, untap.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm well equipped to prepare for it, but I totally understand the argument of like, I definitely think you should be a little punished if your deck is built poorly, but like I think the Drannith Magistrate kind of puts the thumb on the scale. I agree that it's like, okay, now we're shutting off what the format does.
Yeah, I think there are ways of incidentally punishing, and I think there are lots of ways that people will end up getting incidentally punished if they build their deck with not enough removal or too much commander, but and too commander centric. But Drannith is on the far end of the punishing spectrum.
Man, I play a card. So I played Drannith in my Power 2 or Less Matters deck, and honestly, I have. You know, some people are like, oh no, Drannith, but it's a creature, so it dies pretty easily. A card that I think actually, the only reason it's not a saltier card is because I think people don't realize how busted this card is. That I do play in Heliod, that is like 2 Dranniths, is a Null Chamber. It's 3 and a white for an enchantment. You and target opponent each name a card. The named card can't be played.
Oh yeah, that's like Nevermore.
It is Nevermore, but it's 2 Nevermore. So what you do is you just make a political deal. So a lot of times I'll just talk to someone because I'm in mono white, right? So I'll just talk to them and be like, hey, other non-blue deck, how do you feel about not getting hit by a Cycrypt this game? You want to name Cycrypt? But the other thing is, if one person is behind, I can be like, hey, you want to name their commander and I'll name the other commander, and it's just 2 Drannith Magistrates on an enchantment.
Yeah,
that's a funny card.
I remember I used to play an Enchantress deck back when I first really started playing Commander. And I played like a gross Scythus Harvest Hand, like turbo Enchantress list. And I played 1 copy of Nevermore, and I named Cycrypt with a what's the Sterling Grove. It gives all of your enchantments Shroud or Hexproof or whatever. And I named Cycrypt for Nevermore, and the one player across from me just like put his head into his hands. Like, just like he knew he was cooked. You could just tell it was in his hand. It was the best feeling in the world. I felt like a genius. Yeah, so double Nevermore.
Nevermore effects are so underrated. So underrated in Commander. Like, if you're in a low color deck, you should just jam Nevermore effects. Because, like, honestly, it'll save. Because you know, you could on average be like, yeah, somebody at the table probably has a Cycrypt. Somebody probably has a Teferi's Pro. Somebody probably has a Feral. You just name something you don't have, and you've just blanked like the strongest removal in their entire deck.
Yeah, baseline, even if you're up against 3 wackos, you always have a commander to name, you know?
Exactly, yeah. You just name a commander and then boom.
Yeah, I think Oubliette is up there too, as like a real big commander shut off. Like, I think it's worse than like Darksteel mutation or whatever it's called. Yeah, like Oubliette phases out a creature so long as it's on the battlefield. Oh my.
Yeah, it's a funny card.
Oh, it better hope you have enchantment removal, you know, mono red player. I hope you draw your Chaos Warp, because you're never seeing your commander ever again.
I know I had somebody in the comments of my Stacks video asking if I want to say it was Darksteel mutation was a Stacks piece. I was like, no, that's just removal.
That's just removal for sure.
Your play group might want you to think it's a Stacks piece so that you'll stop playing it against them, but it's not. Nope.
Yeah, I do want to wrap around to the main topic of what originally this video was going to be, which is archetypes that are like kind of salty. I want to talk a little bit because we had a little bit of pre-podcast discussion about this. I want to talk about Voltron. I think Voltron's very weak. I feel like it's hard to be salty about Voltron. I think the most salt-inducing thing about Voltron is its play pattern. I feel like a lot of Voltron decks will power out their Voltron, kill a player, and then get their commander shut off somehow. And then we move into the 1 hour waiting game phase where the Voltron player is not having any fun and the person who got knocked out isn't having any fun. And I feel like that's where a lot of the salt from Voltron can sort of stem from, even though Voltron is generally considered to be a pretty weak archetype.
Yeah, I feel like Voltron is only salty if you are not playing enough removal, right? If you find yourself that they're able to play their commander and equip it and enchant it and buff it and hit you and hit you and hit you, then you need some more removal. Like at that point, because there's very few Voltron commanders that outside of like some of the infect ones that are like turbo fast, most of them aren't that quick, especially the ones that are just like big dudes that you're trying to suit up with equipment. So like it's a removal check ultimately. And I think Voltron is like such a poor archetype in Commander because it just plays so poorly. It's like if they don't have removal, they get hosed, and if they do have removal, the Voltron player does nothing. So
yeah,
I feel like a lot of times it's
same with Infect.
A lot of times it's a removal check pretty early though. Like turn 2 or 3 is when they're going to be probably looking to get their first protection equipment online. Probably turn 3 more realistically. Like I'm thinking about like Light Paws, or if I'm thinking about like my Maria deck. It's pretty early that you need to get in there before the protection gets online a lot of times.
Really? I feel like, I don't know, maybe I just haven't seen enough Voltron because it's not that popular of an archetype. I remember playing against Skitherix a few times and it was like pretty quick, but I don't know. I've never really felt that rushed.
I've never played against Skitherix. Light Paws.
Oh, really?
Light Paws is my number one association point for Voltron. And that's a 2-mana commander. So
I have a Light Paws deck. It's not built. It's in like Moxfield, and the number of like Oblivion Ring auras that keep getting printed is like urging me more. The voices are telling me to build Light Paws. It's only a matter of time. We just got sheltered by ghosts in the most recent set. Oh, it's so cool. All these
Maybe I just
auras.
need to see a good Light Paws deck.
Oh man, Light Paws Pariah deck, like pinning you down under the Pariah. Oh, sick. It can get really cool. I say cool. It can get really evil. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm trying to think of what the strongest equipment Voltron commanders are because Light Paws definitely stands out for the auras, but.
For me, I think Sir Gwyn is kind of up there. I know Sir Gwyn is like kind of out of left field. Like, whoa, Sir Gwyn's 6 mana. But Equip 0 is like, that's really good.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. No, yeah. Equip 0 is some real stuff. Oh, it's probably Rograk Arden or something else Arden.
There's also Gallia, Kindler of Hope. She's the Bant commander that is a future sight for equipment and auras, and she'll auto equip. That you cast off the top.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I have heard some gnarly tales about like flipping like 3 equipment off the top of the library, and then someone just getting commander damaged out off a Fire Shrieker that auto equipped.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
The only equipment commander I'm scared of is Noel the Forge Master, and that's because he's a combo deck.
I was gonna say slightly back on topic. I feel like Voltron makes people upset because it is kind of violating the EDH convention of like we're all here to kind of play this fun, participatory thing. We're all spreading the love with the damage. Everybody gets some damage. We're all trying to get out of here roughly the same time. And the fact that Voltron knocks players down one at a time kind of by necessity as a result of the way commander damage works, that definitely offends people a bit. I think for good reason. It sucks to get knocked out super early.
Yeah, player
it sucks to be sitting around. Yeah. I definitely.
It's kind of funny though because like people are like, oh, don't like Slicer or whatever. Actually, there we go. That's a good Voltron commander.
True.
Slicer or Alexios or whatever, because it just like takes out players so quickly and it one at a time as well. So someone might have to sit out. But then if you do the opposite thing and you're like, well, I don't want to knock people out one at a time, so nobody has to sit out. I'll just play combo. Then people are also salty about combo.
Yeah.
So it's like funny that like. To avoid as much salt as if you really wanted to avoid all your salt, you would have to take everyone out at the same time via combat damage turn 9.
Yeah,
exactly.
I made a video called "Combos and Tutors Are Only Boring If You Are," and I feel like the least salty you can get a combo deck is like a doomsday machine that you're building on the table in front of everyone. And it sort of has the same vibe as like I'm building up a huge board and I'm going to get an overrun eventually. Like there's interaction points at sorcery speed that in that sort of vibe is what combo decks can typically defile to turn salty is like I win from hand. GG's, go next. And then that's the sort of games where it feels like people sort of get robbed versus like, you see the Llanowar Elves come down. You see the 3-drop come down. You see the 4-drop next turn. Oh, they ramped and then I played a second 3-drop and like,
I disagree. You know what? I think Voltron and combo are the same.
I feel like they make people mad.
They're just removal checks.
They make people mad.
It's just a removal check.
They are just removal checks. That is fair. It's just like I'm talking about the speed of the removal check as kind of the factor that makes combo more salty than normal.
See, I feel like with Voltron, the removal check comes earlier though. Like at least with combo, even if somebody has done their setup, even if they've got some like protection pieces down, even if they have a counter spell in hand, you can still, disrupt it if you have enough counter magic or if you ally with somebody. If somebody like slams some Voltron equipments down early, you're going to have trouble breaking that in time.
Yeah. I feel the healthiest Voltron deck, either A, is all in on protection and can 100% close out the game for everyone, and basically meaning killing everyone, or B, that eliminates the player elimination salt aspect of Voltron, or B, Voltron is a plan in your deck, but you're not committed to it, i.e., Chromium the Mutable comes to mind as a really good example of this. That's Drago control, but the win condition is commander damage. It's a 7/7 in the command zone that protects itself. It's Esper Drago, though. That's a 7/7 with flash that protects itself.
Yeah, I recommended that as a finisher in my video on control decks.
Yeah, that's a perfect commander for an Esper control deck because, yeah, I'm just going to chip you down for 7 a turn. It's not Voltron, per se. You're not, like, piling up a million things onto one thing, which is what people generally think of. But it's still a commander damage win. And it still has, maybe a more healthy example is my Safara deck. I have a video about her. 7 power commander in the command zone. I can give her double strike. I can run people over really fast. But if that plan fails, I have a backup plan of like a control deck, which takes the monarchy, protects it with flyers, one-sided board clears, stuff like that. And basically like diversifying your plan to have a plan B with Voltron or paying the protection piper and really, filling up your Voltron deck with things to have answers to removal because no one wants to sit out for an hour,
I think that's the best way to go. I think that's the best way to go with Voltron, right? Is just having the max, like, resilience. This is why I think, like, Thrun the Last Troll is one of the best Voltron commanders, right? It's, like, uncounterable and can regenerate itself. You put any additional protection on top of it, it's, like, it's so difficult to get past. And, yeah, it's just a 4/4, right? So it might not be the fastest way to knock a player out of the game, but you'll get there, and they can't do a whole lot to beat it, other than Cycrift or Catch-All.
Yeah, exactly.
See, I feel like with Voltron, in my experience, there are 2 things that are big problems. Those being edicts, as you might expect, and like artifact or enchantment wipes. Like those will shut me down if I'm, at least for a Maria deck. An artifact wipe will be like terrible. Like I'm done right there.
Yeah, Bane of Progress.
Whereas if my commander gets killed, like it'll be back. Whatever, give me a turn or 2.
Yeah, that's fair. And this is where we get back into like the whole Teferi's protection talk. Like, how like we're gonna face a farewell. My heroic intervention isn't gonna do anything against that. I need to upgrade. Like. Yeah,
it's very much an arms race.
I would honestly not mind if Cycrift, Farewell, and Teferi's Pro actually all left the format.
Honestly, if Cycrift Teferi's Pro left the format, I wouldn't need or rather, excuse me, Psych Rift Farewell left the format, I wouldn't need Teferi's Protection anymore. I could run a cool card instead.
I want to ask about my favorite card of all time, which is, I believe it's on EDH. Yeah, it's on EDH Rec's top saltiest cards. Humility. What do you guys think of this card? Because this is my favorite #1 Magic card ever.
It's an extremely oppressive stack space.
Oh yeah, it's once again, like, you should just be packing enchantment removal, but like, you're the mono red player. This player plays Humility. You're just packing with 1/1s now. You have to player removal unless you draw your Chaos Warp. It like feels bad.
Also, they keep printing more and more creature based enchantment and artifact removal, and that feels awful. Like you have a like Reclamation Sage in hand,
yeah,
and
my
you see
Witch
Humility,
Enchanter.
like yeah, like you theoretically prepared for this contingency, in quotes, the contingency of a terrifying enchantment, but this enchantment prevents that, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's much more objectionable than most stack pieces.
I have gone on record saying that if you're a Brago player and you get blown out by Torpor Orb because your enchantment removal is ETB creatures, then you kind of deserve it, and haha. But like, also, like, if you do take that advice and you're like, okay, great, I'm gonna put 1 Seal of Cleansing in my deck, or I'm gonna put 1 actual factual disenchant in my deck, and then the white-blue Humility player just counterspells it. Well, great, your Lauren is rotting in your hand, your Witch Enchanter's rotting in your hand.
Yeah.
Like, that just feels rotten.
you can only prepare for so much. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't like Humility.
Yeah, it's a powerful card. I'm not gonna deny that it's a strong card. I just think it's so cool. There's so many interesting things you can do with it, because we were talking about Voltron.
Yeah.
This is an awesome Voltron card.
I think from the perspective,
so good.
From the perspective of like high power CEDH, I respect Humility a lot. I think there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. But
yeah, I think like counters, right? It's a great +1/+1 counter card.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great equipment card. You just equip after the after the Humility comes into play.
Great with tokens, obviously.
I feel like the big thing for Humility is the fact that it just removes all abilities. It's insane. It's like a Hushbringer in addition to also being a, like, it does everything. Where I feel like a more healthier version of a Humility is definitely like Kudo, King Amongst Bears, makes everything into a 2/2 bear, but it doesn't remove abilities, right? You still get your ETBs, you still get your tap abilities, your Arcanus the Omnipotent if you're still playing that.
Those are just different cards, though. That's like, that doesn't. Yeah, that's not the same thing.
Kudo is. It's almost a little bit too watered down, in my opinion. Like,
That's fair.
Kudo does Kudo things. I respect what Kudo does, but Kudo doesn't never feel.
It's a cool card.
It doesn't really feel like a stacks piece usually, unless you pair it with like some other thing that makes your opponent's stuff die on the spot.
Yummy Elish Norn.
Yeah,
Elish Norn, yeah.
That's just like a removal engine combo, basically.
You know what's funny about Humility? I think it's interesting that it is considered a high stacks card or high salt card. I've played this card for years and years and years in many, many different shells. I've used it in almost every way you can think of: Planeswalker decks, token decks, equipment decks, counters decks, blah, blah, everything, right? I have found very little people, especially new players, get frustrated with the card. I think it's really interesting.
Really?
Yes. I think that new players find the card weird and novel more than anything else. I've had old heads get mad at me.
It does help that it has the Phil Foglio art. That does kind of bring some zaniness, some levity to the table.
Yeah.
And I actually think that this is just a kind of like general salt topic in general, but I think players saying that things are salty and stuff teaches new players to think that way as well. And I think that that's like a poor system.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying I need to make this very clear. I'm not saying that you should make every single deck designed with a stasis lock in it or whatever, right? Obviously I'm not saying that, right? But what I am saying is, like, I feel like when people see cards like Drannith Magistrate, and when you out loud go like, oh, I can't believe you're playing this, that's rude, you should never do that. What does that show to a new player, Like, what happens to the new player who sees someone react this way? They're like, whoa, this card must be unbeatable because everybody's freaking out over it.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, going, oh, now I need to find my creature removal. This is a very high power card.
Yeah, I think...
I
can see the theory. I think the novelty is really what's like keeping the levity for the new player though. It's like, oh great, Drannith Magistrate. Oh wow, that blocks out my commander. That's an interesting piece. Versus like, this is my like 5 millionth game of Commander. I'm here. Someone plays a Drannith. Oh great. Like, you know, like you can sort of get jaded over time even without outside influence.
Yeah. Well, I also think that I definitely like playing with, you know, the people who, you know, have been playing since the 2000s or the 90s and who are just used to a lot of the more oppressive things. But yeah, I think with newer players, I always, you know, feel bad when they're being pitted against a bunch of stacks pieces, because it's just everything tells them they can't do something. Like, no, that costs a little bit more, that doesn't have an ability.
Yeah.
And I think like some amount of that they can accept, but like Commander is a very like kind of information overloady format, as I've said in the past, and I think adding rules on top of that is really and humility is probably less bad in some ways, just because it
also simplifies.
It poses a serious it poses a serious rule. But I think broadly, rules cards are definitely a little bit questionable for newer players.
I think people don't give new players enough credit.
Agree.
I think that like we need to. I feel like every single time that a powerful card is played, it should be a teaching experience for new players and not a salt experience for new players. I really think that. Yeah. And I think most new players can like learn easily. I mean, like I've played Humility a lot over the years. It's my favorite Magic card of all time. And like I've had new players that were playing a precon and they were like, "Whoa, that card turned off my deck." And then they hit me. What is that 6-mana one?
What does it do?
Desert Twister, 6-mana, destroy target permanent.
Oh yeah.
It was in Commander 2014, and they just Desert Twisted it, and they were like, "Cool, that's a weird card. I've never seen that before." And then we moved on. With
I love removal so much.
Yeah.
I will say, like, I used to play Humility in an Azorius deck, and Ephara, Goddess of the Bulls.
Oh yeah.
Incredibly oppressive and powerful in that deck, right? You just play all counter magic. You play Humility, and you play something that lets you make tokens at instant speed, and you just draw 4 cards a turn, 5 cards a turn cycle, and just counter everything to stop the Humility. It's really strong there, but I think outside of exactly that shell, I think it's actually a very fine card.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely are onto something for sure with your kind of idea that basically inventing salty cards as a type of card and kind of pushing that knowledge to newer players does, you know, kind of create their status to some level. And I think, you know, people who are much more used to that sort of thing aren't as affected by it. And I know I do hear about kind of these play groups where, you know, everything is banned, you know, no stacks, no combo, no Voltron, no infect, no mill, you know, and it's just like, what are you trying to protect yourself from? You know, this feels like a mistake.
Is it the Game Warf?
The Gamer's Warf is incredible. That's my favorite piece of Magic trivia.
It gets posted to the Reddit like every other week or something. Oh, it's so legendary. Have you seen this?
I feel like I've probably seen this, but I would love to see it again.
It's a store with its own, like, it has 3 separate, like, Commander formats that they play. And there's different they have like 300 banned cards on the ban list. And the most insane thing about the Gamer's Wharf is that they have eroded Planeswalkers. So the ultimate ability of Planeswalkers will be removed or changed.
Yeah, so there's 175 cards on the ban list. And then there's an additional 12 Planeswalkers that have erratas.
What?
And then they have another additional set of rules. Like Storm Count cannot proceed past
Annihilator
1.
never triggers. That's another one.
Oh no, I have not seen this. You can't do this in a paper card game.
This is a physical store. It gets like posted to Reddit like every couple of months or something.
Oh my
god.
god.
It is so... Some of these ban cards... Okay. Ad nauseum. One CDH player showed up once because you can't play this in like a normal deck.
Yeah, you have to build around it.
Casual deck. Angie is just gone. Okay, cool. They have the really funny like jank land destruction, like bend or break.
Yeah. Baral, Chief of Compliance is that. Okay. Huh. Emery?
Yeah.
What's so good about Emery? I'm sorry. I'm fascinated. I'm just reading through this list.
Oh no, it is a beautiful journey.
Hive mind is banned.
Jace Friend's Prodigy. Wow. Can't be playing.
I know I can't play the high tide deck.
Yeah, my favorite thing is that so there's Vicious Cat is the name of one of the formats. One of them's named T-Rex, and it's always been Rapture level. It's supposed to be Raptor, but they said Rapture level, and that's been that for like 6 years.
Rapture. That's
Skull Clamp is
Skull
gone.
Clamp's banned. Are you kidding? Yeah, of course.
But it's like that's like the Timmy Creature card.
Is Rapture level like what you play after like the world ends, and is that the EDH of Heaven or whatever?
Xancha Sleeper Agent?
Oath of Teferi.
Oath of Teferi.
I don't even know what that card does.
Oath of Teferi plus one of the really crappy Jaces and Nicol Bolas God Eternal or God whatever, Dragon God, the one that has all abilities of all planeswalkers, is a combo. I'll have a link in the description to follow along if you want to look at this comical ban list.
We are completely off the deep end, by the way.
I was gonna say this is such good podcast content, just like saying random card names and then cackling for 2 seconds.
Lands that become creatures and die due to the controlling player's choice to attack or block with them would die as a result, then do not return to play.
So that's referring to a previous rule. They have a rule where if you get mass land destruction, all lands return to play tapped. I was like, dude, landfall's broken. You play Armageddon, you get like a million Scoot Swarms. It's like a switch shift.
True.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, here you go. They eroded it. Lands returning to play under these conditions do not trigger ETB effects or abilities. They that wasn't there before.
Why? They have to make more rules to fix their own rules. I've had a video idea cooking for a while that is just house rules in general suck. I think they're terrible for the game because it encourages you to, instead of like thinking about like how can I beat this Cascade deck, or like what went wrong when I lost to Cascade, it's just Cascade is banned, and it like doesn't teach you to be a better player.
You see this a lot in random tabletop sim games. There's a culture on tabletop sim where people are like, what's the mulligan rules? And for me, someone who plays paper Magic a lot, I'm like, what do you mean? What are the paper mulligan? What are the mulligan rules? On tabletop sim, each table does it kind of differently, but the majority of players seem to just mulligan until they have a hand with lands in it. So I asked people how many lands they're running in their deck. They Tabletop Simulator randoms play 30 lands in their deck, like on average, and it's like
because they get
it's
6
like no wonder, like it's like a
optimizing.
self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm watching the Ouroboros eat its own tail. Like no wonder why you're mulliganing 6 times, because you don't put any lands in your deck, and it's like it's crazy.
I think house rules aren't intrinsically a bad thing. Like, I think they come from a place of being kind of a game designer and wanting to create the optimal experience, and I think there's something cool about that. But if they're just saying, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't want any of these roadblocks in front of me, I don't want any difficulties while playing this game, I think that's less good.
Okay, I think it's important to draw a small line in this conversation where it's like, yeah, I don't want to see mass land destruction at my table. Like, that's not what we're talking about, viewers at home.
No, I mean there's a huge difference between going like, hey, no turn 30 combos, and like, if I see a Magus of the Tabernacle, I'm gonna flip the whole table.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's very okay to set boundaries for your fun, but it can't be like 50. Like, just play. Listen, it's okay if you find the correct table for you with all that stuff, but you can't come to a different table and expect to play Commander in a reasonable fashion when you have like a laundry list, so to speak. Like, it's okay if you're like, listen, no mass land destruction. Are we cool? All right, great, let's go. Like, that's like the limit for me, is like 1 or 2 things. Like, I don't want to see these things. Okay, great, let's go. Versus like, I don't want a Gamer's Warf PDF to play with you.
I have a 3 terabyte like hard drive I have to bring around of rules. Is this I have a question for you guys. Is this going to be the most disjointed episode we've ever done, or are we gonna make a more disjointed one later?
We can get more disjointed easily.
Oh yeah,
we can do it.
Let me crush this soju before one of these podcasts. We'll get right off the rails. Question zone.
Real quick, yeah, question zone, you know, all that. We're going to answer some questions. We're going to answer one question from one viewer today because we've gone on too many rants this podcast. Oops. Sorry, friends. If you want your question answered, you can put question zone at the start of the comment so it helps us find them easier. You can also tweet at Elk and I, links in the description. Our one question for this episode, because we only have time for this, is what is a hobby you enjoy outside of MTG? I also play 40k. It's kind of what my whole aesthetic is, right? I have a Skatari. 40k is quite fun. It's really cool, and they do a lot of things that it's very similar to Magic, and they do a lot of things better than Magic, other than the fact that the actual game is more tedious to play, but the lore is like significantly better, and the actual like game, they take a lot of strides to avoid power creep and stuff. Like the newest edition of the game is phenomenal. It's the most fun. I started playing in like 9th, and now we're on 10th. Oh no, I played in 8th actually, and now we're on 10th edition. 10th edition is phenomenally fun. They literally scaled back the entire game. All the power creep that they built up for like years, they just eroded and fixed everything. It's crazy. The game is phenomenal. 10th edition is really fun. I would recommend
I can
playing.
Only have one expensive hobby at a time.
It's cheaper than Magic, honestly. In terms of competitive Magic, excuse me, I should say. You could build like a $30 budget commander deck and have a blast, but it's way cheaper than getting into like modern.
Yeah, what about you, Alex?
I'm big into cooking. I've been trying to get more into baking too, but I've generally been worse at that. But yeah, I've definitely been gearing up for soup and stew season and marinating in possible recipes of things to make. I just made some, like, I think it's reduced down to the point where I can call it a demi-glace, like a turkey demi-glace with some like smoked turkey bones I got from Costco, and it's gonna be good.
I just want to real quick interject. I'm also on a bit of a cooking arc. My girlfriend and I watched Culinary Class Wars, which, if you like cooking shows, this is the best one, period. Don't at me. Highly recommended. And we've just been trying to recreate stuff from the show. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Nice.
For me, I just got my first rice cooker, so I'm excited about that. Yippee, rice. I could eat it forever. Anyway, hobbies outside of Magic. I am an artist. I specifically, I like portraiture a lot, but any sort of figure drawing I do a lot of. I don't do it as much anymore. I'm a little bit busy with my move, but I've been practicing a lot with dip and sort of like dip pens. That's like been my most recent fascination, and I'm probably going to stick with it once I get some good home studio space. Probably try some illustrating with ink and whatnot. Besides that,
nice.
It's just kind of D&D, really. I play D&D every week with a couple friends, and I
think we all play D&D, right?
Yeah.
Alex, do you play D&D? I thought you didn't.
Yes, I do.
I see. Yeah, I DM'd for like 6 years, and finally I'm playing in a game after like so long, and
yeah, that's my problem too. I'm locked as dungeon master.
I was a DM a couple years ago, and I spent way too much time on it.
Oh,
like
you seem like the type to be like arms deep in the world building.
Yes, very much so. And it was because I was just working a retail job, nothing else. So I had like this creative energy that had to go somewhere, and it went into way too much effort on D&D.
Yeah, when I was working in the medical field, I was working front desk, and I was just jamming campaign notes during slow hours.
Shall we wrap up the podcast then?
Yep.
I guess so.
Let's do it.
I gotta go to bed.
Yeah, me too. I've been up for like
Woohoo.
a million hours.